The story of the M25-3 gang was on the front page of every national newspaper. It was only during those interrogations with these police officers that I discovered that I was being accused of a murder and a series of aggravated robberies. Like, no, what are you talking about? I didn't do that. No, I wasn't there. That's a lie. Things started to grow in me that made me become the person that I am today.
What is that thing that started to grow in you?
Early hours of the morning, I'm in bed and I'm asleep, and I heard a commotion 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and thought it was actually my best mate and his brother, who often had arguments, and started to walk down the stairs in my boxer shorts, t-shirt. And then I saw men in balaclavas pointing guns at me, telling me to stand still, not move, in really loud voices, or they'll shoot me. I saw my brother, my best friend's brother, being taken out of the flat at that moment, handcuffed, going backwards, and my flat mate had already been moved out. And then I was told to come downstairs. I was told to lay on the floor. They put plastic handcuffs on my hands behind my back, all the time, sort of shouting and threatening to shoot me if I moved, asking me whether there was anybody else in my flat. I didn't at that point really realize that they were the police, because there was no police stop like you do in the movies. It was just guys pointing guns, screaming and shouting. I was disorientated and I was taken out of my flat. And it was only at that point I realized they were police, because there were other uniformed officers. These guys weren't uniformed officers. I think they called them the S-17 squad or something, the firearms special squad or something. So it was only when I got out onto the landing outside of my flat and was dragged down the stairs that I first realised that they were the police. And at that point I saw other tenants who were living in that hostel at the time also sort of face down on the floor. And as we speak about it, I remember one of my flatmates almost looking up to me with these eyes as the police were kind of knelt on his back. And you kind of never forget those images. They're kind of images that stick with you at those very moments. And I was taken out of the flat, and it was at that point that police officers identified themselves, told me I was being arrested for serious offences, and then I was put in the back of a police van. And it was at that moment, you know, on reflection, at the time, it was terrifying. It was horrible. It was wrong. And even though I was involved in crime, there was nothing that warranted armed police coming to my property and arresting me. Well, at least I didn't think so anyway. But when I was in the back of that police van at that very moment, and I was in the back of the van with my best friend, Michael, and his brother, police officers opened the van and they called Michael's name and they removed him from the van, and they called his brother's name and they removed him from the van. And there was something really strange about that, because there was 12, 13 people arrested in that flat at that very time. They were all being bundled into different vans. But at that very moment, I was on my own. And I was on my own for the next 12 years from that very moment onwards. And there was something very indicative about what happened there to isolate me into something that a crime that I didn't commit. And it started at that very moment, as far as I'm concerned.
How long did they interrogate you for? And when did you find out the crime that they were trying to sort of place you against?
So you get taken, I was taken in this kind of woo, 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 all the vans and the police, taken to police stations in and around the Surrey, Canterbury, Caterham area. And I was interrogated for 2 or 3 days. It was, you know, after they'd taken my property, and I met a duty solicitor who came in to one of the police cells that I was held in, who told me that I was being, I'd been arrested for aggravated burglary and other serious offences, but hadn't told me at that point that there was a murder and a series of aggravated robberies involved. So it was only during the interrogation, 3 days. So it was on the 22nd of December that I was arrested. So on the 22nd of December, I was interrogated. The 23rd of December, on the 24th of December, I was charged. So it was only during those interrogations with these police officers that I discovered that I was being accused of a murder and a series of aggravated robberies. that were in relation to crimes that had been committed around the M25 area. There was a huge amount of publicity at the time, but I was unaware of that publicity because I wasn't a kid that paid any attention to the news or had any interest in what was going on in the newspapers. But at the time, the story of the M25-3 gang was on the front page of every national newspaper. Rewards were being offered for the arrest of these killers, these monsters, as the media were describing this gang. But I was completely oblivious to any of that and only found out during that interrogation that I was being accused of murder, not knowing it was anything to do with that particular crime and the serious aggravated robberies.
I watch a lot of these police interrogation videos, and you can't help but wonder what you would do in that situation if you are innocent, what you would say, how you would be, if you're triple guessing your own body language. But in those interrogations, when you find out what the crime is and you realise no, this isn't me. I didn't do this. I wasn't there. What are you thinking and feeling? Are you feeling that you're going to be out and they've got the wrong guy and they're going to realise, or are you terrified?
I think it's a combination of both. I tried to hide my fear, and I think anybody would. When you come from, and it goes back to that environment that I grew up in and my kind of experiences, if you like, with the police and people who are constantly in your face kind of thing. And I think during the interrogation, there was a lot of fear. I was scared. But at the same time, I was cocky. I was a teenager. I was kind of almost, for the first time in my life, standing up for myself. I mean, standing up for myself in a fight is one thing. Against my peers or people. Standing up against the authority or authorities like police officers is a completely different mindset. But during those interrogations, during those interviews with the police where they started to tell me that I'd killed somebody, tell me that I was involved in these crimes and that people were saying that I was involved in these crimes that I knew I was not involved in, it allowed me to be a little bit cocky. Cocky is the only way of describing it, where I didn't shut up and do a no comment thing. It's like, no, what are you talking about? I didn't do that. No, I wasn't there. That's a lie. So I was defending myself and standing up for myself from the very beginning. And I think that created a situation where the police themselves were having to make my life harder, more difficult in that interview room, because I wouldn't say roll over, but I wasn't accepting what they were telling me I should accept. And that's not me saying that the police were trying to get me to confess for crimes that I didn't commit. It was more about them asserting their authority and telling this little brown boy with dreadlocks who couldn't, articulate himself like I can with you right now, that he was a murderer, that he was a bad person who done bad things, and we've got you, and we're going to lock you up for the rest of your life. That's what I was experiencing. So it was a terrifying experience, and I was scared, and I was on my own, and I wasn't being supported by the solicitor at the time. But equally, at that moment, during that time, something started to grow in me that made me become the person that I am today.
What is that thing that started to grow in you?
Hope and resilience and determination, and this ability not to allow someone else to dictate who you are, what you're going to become, what you should do, what you shouldn't do. It's as if they were planting seeds within me, my physical body and in my mind, that would grow over the next few months and years that I was wrongfully imprisoned, convicted of a murder and these crimes that I hadn't committed. I didn't realise it at the time, but on reflection, I realised in those moments where I'd always been a follower, followed my friends, followed the environment that I was in, got involved in things that if you'd asked me to do it on my own, I would never have done it because I'd have been too scared to do it. Burgle a house on my own, you're joking. I couldn't do something like that. But when my mates were doing it, yeah, I'd follow and get involved. When we were going in shops together and shoplifting, I'd get involved. Ask me to do it on my own and I'd be quite scared to do it. And so for the first time in those interrogations and during the early remand period, I became, I would say, a young man, And that's where the seeds of a young man, for me, started to grow, when I was put in a predicament where there was no way out apart from drawing within myself the strength that I needed to get out.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.